in the last election that's saying, "Oh, I don't like either of them. Neither of them suit my interests."
I don't think it's necessarily urban though a lot either. Like I think a big reason why Wisconsin was lost for Hillary was because a lot of black voters, like working class black voters, didn't turn out.
Yeah,
So I definitely say like these things do
yeah.
mix, like between class and race, and also I think depends on states there as well.
hmm I totally agree. I think I definitely is it goes beyond simply cities because like you said a lot there's black voters everywhere. African American culture and just populations have diffused throughout the whole nation at this point, and it's important to target them everywhere. But it's hard because sort of, especially when you have someone like Biden who's saying if you don't vote for me, you're not black. That he's really, it's like, who is he putting himself out there to at this point? Because like I said earlier, some days he'll cater to one group, one demographic, and the next day he'll cater to the other. So it's so clear that they're trying to get as wide a reach on the American people, as wide, include as many people in their, because they're supposed to be like welcoming everyone that Trump sort of disregarded, dismissed with opening arms. And I think they're also trying to go into some of the people that Trump does welcome and say, we can do better for you. But I think they're doing a bit of a poor job, a bit of just an all over the place, very unfocused job of sort of commanding that following, commanding that support, and I mean garnering that support. I'm worried. I'm worried to see whether they'll be able to get from all these different types of America, but as they're trying to, I think it will be really difficult, especially with this whole switch up in demographics. I can't. I just did they say in the article why there's the main reason for all these demographic switch ups?
A big thing would be, I would say, mostly because of, I mean, this is at least from Chuck Rocha, who was the seen from the Bernie Sanders campaign as the architect of his deep Latino support. He expressed a lot of concern that Biden's team came late to court Latino support because of almost non-existent outreach. There has not been a lot of, and you think if there were to do best, like with any group of Latinos in the country, it would be Florida Latinos, because Biden, being kind of a conservative Republican, explicitly probably the most right-wing guy in the Democratic Party, came out on top, who at least had any shot, and deeply committed to it with a deep record of it. I think you think that those voters would be definitely at least not dropping from where they were with Hillary, but I think it really shows like there has been so little outreach. I mean, there was quotes leaked from Biden advisors being like, "We don't really see Latinos to their own path, on their own path to winning, like on our path to winning. It's not really a big deal." And they may actually be right, because this is the other part of the puzzle here. And he still is doing better than Hillary Clinton in Florida. Joe Biden is. Biden is leaning onto a surprisingly high number of seniors, once thought to be the core constituency of the Trump campaign. Biden's superior performance to Clinton in Florida can almost entirely be chalked up to this. So they're both kind of eating away at the Latino support and at the senior support in turn, which is super essential to Trump's coalition and could lead to Biden being up in states like Maine, where Republicans traditionally do better. Especially, I think they have this weird thing with the congressional district up there, but Maine does typically better. But I saw just before we started the show that it is in a big way. Maine has kind of the senior gap there had been narrowed, and that is causing. So the role of the evangelical movement in bringing in and shifting opinions of Latino voters suggests potentially more long-term parity between the parties in terms of at least that demographic. In this election, seniors are most at risk from the death of coronavirus, and perhaps Trump's miserable performance managing the crisis could have turned them away. Biden also stressed in commercials that Trump's executive action deferring the payroll tax and his vow to cut it permanently would cripple the Social Security Trust Fund. The senior bloc is larger and more important in key states than Latinos at this time, so this trade-off may not sink Biden's chances at all. but a short-term gain in seniors offset by a long-term realignment of Latinos away from the Democratic Party is not a break-even proposition and could spell doom in the not-too-distant future. That is exactly where I want to go with this, because what happens when Trump's gone? What happens when you need to win back the young people that you abandoned because you want to go right with Joe Biden and all the Latinos and went with all these kind of suburban, lifelong Republicans for the 2020 election, and you have this big coalition that's great, but what happens when there's another Republican that actually may have more broader, I mean, this Republican does have broad Republican support, but is that really a sustainable coalition? That's a question I'm really wondering about, and don't think so.
Yeah, I think they're a little bit short-sighted right now. They're so focused on this next election, because obviously they have to be. This is one of the most monumentous elections, just for not only for America, but for democracy as a whole, as a concept, as a ideal in modern society. But I totally agree with you. It's like, okay, you get there. If you don't do everything right, if you don't fix everything wrong, if you don't make the sort of this amazing progress from all the the deterioration, the regression that Trump brought, then if you don't do that amazing job, then you're just gonna have very little supporters, because you gave up sort of the left, a large chunk of the left, and you catered to a large chunk of the right, and I can guarantee they're going to spend a large chunk of the time trying to doing the same now, trying to figure out, how do we cater to this group? How do we cater to this group? What, just making it seem that they're just trying to tell people what they want to hear without actually doing anything for anybody. And I think if they can actually make some relief, some reform, some actual long-standing change that betters the nation, then their fears will subside a bit, and they can worry a little bit less about the re-election. But like there's Obama took us out of a recession. He still his presidency isn't looked back upon as it's this gleaming, sort of shining, spotless thing. He did, he's arguably could have done more for the nation than they'll be able to achieve now. And, there's still a lot of controversy as to whether that was, and whether that was in regards to the left and the right, whether that was, good. And if I just don't see them being able to do enough where that they're not going to have to just simply cater to people again. And they're losing so many people now that if they don't do everything they need to do, they're gonna be in a really tough position next election time, even tougher than they're in now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's going to be a very, very interesting situation to watch how this plays out. Like, where both parties go in the future is going to be, I think, radically different from where they are now. And it's going to be very interesting to watch those power struggles play out. But we do have some good, mostly electoral results for you to report. On Tuesday, Delaware went to the polls after one of the most contentious primary seasons in recent memory, which isn't really saying a lot for that state because they don't have very contentious primary seasons. At the top of the ticket, Delaware Democrats choose to stick with what they know. Governor John Carney easily won his primary, while U.S. Senator Chris Coons, who spent nearly $2.6 million since the beginning of 2019, easily fended off a challenge from progressive activist Jess Scarane. Very sad. She was very good. Coons is now going to be facing a QAnon supporter in the general election, which is going to be probably pretty lopsided victory for him, but still. While Scarane received roughly 3,000 more votes in the primary than Carrie Evelyn Harris, who ran against Tom Carper in 2018, Coons received an eye-popping 34,000 more votes than Carper and topped 70% of the vote. Coons, who is not ruled out immediately abandoning a seat next year to serve in a potential Biden administration, solidified his position as the leader of his generation of Delaware centrists. And there was another lesson, not that we needed it, that even if liberals say they support policies like the Green New Deal, Medicare for All, and judicial reform, that isn't always enough, especially when you're against more money, corporate power, and name recognition. So really sad to see that Jess kind of got rolled there. But further down the ticket, the left had a lot of reasons to celebrate. To start, 4 state legislative incumbents lost their primaries to challengers backed by the Working Families Party. State Senator Dave McBride, who had been in the legislature since 1978, and as the state Senate president pro tempore, is the single most powerful legislator in the state, and 3 state representatives, John and Viola Earl Jacques, and Raymond Siegfried. 4 might not seem like a lot, but there's only a grand total of 62 people in the Delaware General Assembly total. So in one fell swoop, Progressive knocks out the 8% of the 12-person Senate caucus and 12% of the state House caucus. So pretty insane. Replacing them on the Democratic ticket in November is a group of lefty candidates whose elections even 6 years ago were unthinkable. McBride was defeated by a black social worker named Marie Pinkney. Eric Morrison, an openly gay man, defeated Jacques, an opponent of LGBTQ rights, who attacked Morrison for performing in drag. Again, this is a Democratic Party member here attacking Eric Morrison for performing in drag. He's a drag queen. It was like, really? You're a drag queen? Like, almost like he was yelling at him like a father-son relationship. Very weird. Community activist Larry Lambert defeated Siegfried, who in his first time in office, and Wilson Anton, a 27-year-old Viola aide who ran against her old boss, will be the first Muslim woman elected to office in Delaware. All 4 candidates support the Green New Deal, Medicare buy-in option, and a $15 minimum wage. Currently, Delaware's minimum wage is just $9.25 per hour. So, yeah, this, I think, is going to be a really great way for the left to build power locally, like bit by bit, brick by brick. And the Tea Party didn't turn their nose up at these local elections, and they're always something the left should compete in. So, what's your reaction to these elections and really the whole primary season of really encouraging victories for the future of the Democratic Party as a whole?
Mitch McConnell is arguably just as to blame, if not more to blame, for majority of what's going on right now, because he's Trump, while he's been going crazy, saying all these terrible just polarizing just furthering and fueling ignorance and hatred and violence, and he actually hasn't been doing that much governmentally, and all the damage to our government, much of that stuff has been coming from the Senate, Congress, and a little certain aspects of the administration, as we hear with what's his name, DeJoy, postmaster.
Yeah.
It's that we need to get Trump out, we first need to uproot everything that he's done, and to uproot that we need to start with the legislative bodies, and before we start with those, we need to start first at statewide. So I think it's so promising. And it's really it's encouraging, like you said, to start to see, start moving in the right direction, at least start to get the ball rolling. So eventually, by the time it rolls further and further down the mountain, it's not just a little snowball anymore with certain caucuses, but the Democrats, or at least the left, reclaims the larger legislative bodies and doesn't allow Trump to just get away with whatever he wants to get away with, while they just reverse progress, essentially. So yeah, I'm very, very pleased with that, and I think if they can continue on with that even if Trumps get reelected, that will be a very, very promising thing for the future of this nation.
Yeah, I think that is really the path forward. We got people out there, whether it be these people who won their elections in Delaware, or people like Cori Bush, people like Jamal Bowman here in New York. Great ways to go forward. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Thank you to Evan for coming on. Really appreciate it. We did give you a little bit of a long one there. Very nice. So thank you so much for sticking with us there, Evan. Really appreciate it. And this has been your Newsflash.